Hello, my name is Jonathan Rivera, and this is the issue of minimum wage. Alright, so to have an introduction to the nature of the problem, minimum wage is both an economic and ethical issue affecting millions of workers and businesses. Minimum wage is defined as the lowest legal pay rate set by the government. Right now, currently, the U.S. federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. In LA County, where I currently am, it is $17.81. The debate of this topic of minimum wage is to raise it or to not raise it. This leads into an ethical tension between the fairness to the employees and the cost that it will cost the businesses to raise the minimum wage. This includes all stakeholders. I wanted to include this quote by Pharrell. When a business decision involves any consequences, the alternatives must be examined as to what is harmful or beneficial to the stakeholders. So basically, what this means is that the businesses have a responsibility to take uh, the effects of the workers into the decision making process. So, the ethical dilemma. So, fair pay versus business survival. So, do employees deserve to have higher pay, or do businesses have the right to prioritize their own survival over their employees? So, right now, workers struggle to survive on current wages. We see a lot of minimum wage workers work multiple jobs. Employers, on the other hand, have concerns about the higher business costs and expenses that it would take to increase the minimum wage. So, really, the problem that we're seeing here is should profit outweigh worker well being? Alrighty, so some ethical issues behind this. So, the first I wanted to point out from Pharrell is fairness, which is defined as being just, equitable, and impartial. Basically, what this is saying is that many people feel that businesses have an obligation to pay their workers a fair wage. Tying into this, so many full-time workers still are below the poverty line, even though they work full-time, uh, leading to many people to either rely on government assistance or to work multiple jobs. This leads into abusive or unreasonable expectations, which is another thing described by Pharrell, basically saying that it's unreasonable for them to work full time, have multiple jobs, and still be expected to perform at maximum a performance. This also leads into discrimination, as the majority of minimum wage workers are minorities and women. And this also leads into the corporate social responsibility, which has a inherent obligation to its workers in the name of honesty, fairness, and integrity. Now, the stakeholders that are affected by this are first the employees. They wages directly affect their survival and being able to thrive in the modern society, and fair pay would help this a lot. Now, for employers, this is also directly affected as their operating costs can be increased and their profit could be decreased if more of the money that they're making is going to the employees. This also affects the consumers as a whole, and the consumers both kind of include the employees and employers because all of us are consumers if you buy a product, which could lead to a price increase or a service decrease as we see less people being hired or less hours be given due to the higher minimum wage. And lastly, the public and general public and government. So we could see some welfare strains. So, like, say minimum wage is not increased, we could see more people rely on government assistance. We could also see homelessness rate being risen as people cannot pay their general basic needs. So that's kind of the biggest dilemma that we're in right now when looking at the issue of minimum wage. So how should we handle this? The first ethical theory we're going to look at is utilitarianism. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. But basically, what this is saying is that this mode of thought wants to do the best for the greatest number of people. So in this case, raising wages benefits the majority, which is the employees. Now, the benefits of this will be reducing poverty for the employees, as their basic needs can be met, and boost spending, as those employees now have more spending money. Now, some risks behind this include job cuts, as employers now have to pay more. Now they want to give less employment opportunities, higher costs to both consumers and the businesses. And this could also lead to the exploitation of minority groups, as since this idea benefits the greatest amount of people, if there is a smaller group that is exploited, but this benefits the greatest amount of people, then this is somewhat justified in this ethical theory. Now, in the second ethical theory that we're going to be looking at, it's Kant's ethics. So, in this way, businesses look at they have a duty and more obligation over profit. So, they look at in this way they treat workers as people and not as tools. And this is kind of an idea got up by Farrell. Integrity equals values without compromise. So, in this way, fair wages kind of honor a worker's dignity and really kind of ties into the idea that you're treating workers as people and not as tools. All right, so the last ethical theory is virtue ethics. So, really, this one kind of focuses on how businesses use virtues to facilitate what businesses' decisions and practices are going to be making. So, they're going to be focusing on honesty, fairness, and integrity. Ethical culture builds this kind of ethical culture builds trust and loyalty. Um, so virtuous businesses have businesses practices that reflect the values that they have. So, for example, like say a business values fairness, they would raise their wages for their employees. So, when analyzing all three of these theories, uh, we see the first theory has the pro benefit of benefiting the majority of people. So, obviously, in this case, being the employees as they are the majority, but this may harm the minority. Now, an example I'd like to use for this is a sweatshop. Obviously, these workers of the sweatshop are facing unjust conditions, and overall, very, it's a very uh, undignified things for those workers. However, those workers could be giving uh, mass quantities of clothing that benefits the employers and that consumers just keep wanting more of. So even though that those people are being exploited, this ethical theory allows that because it benefits the majority of people. So that's the biggest con with this theory and the biggest ethical dilemma behind that theory. Now, the second principle is Kantian ethics. This respects the dignity of the employees. However, the biggest thing is that it ignores smaller businesses. Smaller businesses can't afford to increase employee wages because they would not be able to survive. Some businesses just don't have enough financial means to do this. Virtue ethics, this builds trust. However, not every culture has the same virtues. So, in this way, virtues are kind of subjective, and they're sometimes there's not an alignment. So, Farrell kind of describes these three theories, and honestly, comes to the conclusion that combining these three theories, balancing that you need to combine each aspect of these theories to balance ethics and practicability. So, the decision that we're coming to is to raise the minimum wage so that minimum wage workers can get their basic needs met. I believe that this is a basic human right and principle that should be met. Nobody's trying to make the minimum wage workers work a fabulous and luscious life. We're just simply trying to get their basic needs met. But how can we actually implement this? So I think gradually raising the minimum wage to match inflation. I think this is kind of a hard thing to do and would be a strain on businesses, but I think this is a practical way to implement this idea of raising minimum wage. This also supports employees and business sustainability as there is not a sudden increase in prices. This also promotes a corporate social responsibility as they are taking on the obligation to meet the basic needs of the workers. And this builds long term trust with the public, the employees, and all stakeholders. And overall, it just reflects the ethical responsibility of said company. Now, the effects of these decisions are going to be stronger local economies. So, tying back into the idea that employees will have more spending money, which will make more consumers and therefore turn the engine of the local businesses, also reduced poverty and homelessness as people now could meet their basic needs, also leads to improved basic mental health as people are not worrying about their making ends meet, and also enhance corporate reputation. So these are my references, and thank you. I just want to say thank you for letting me do this presentation by myself. The circumstances behind this were pretty substantial, so just thank you.